welcome to another episode of the Orthodox Logos. My name is Ian Silver. I'm here with my co-hosts from the Road to Paradise, Nathaniel Harmon.
Greetings.
And today, per request from one of our recent YouTube videos, we had somebody comment. His name was JB Struggling, and he asked us to, and we're all struggling, so I can appreciate that name. He asked us to do, I believe, which is his patron saint.
Yeah, his patron saint, I believe, and also the saint that kind of brought him into Orthodoxy is Saint Germanus of Paris, which we mistakenly thought was Saint Germanus of Auxerre. So we were getting ready to do that stream, and then I went back and looked at the comment and was like, "Wait a minute,
Yeah,
I can't read."
Not the same one.
Close, but not the same.
But yeah, real quick, we've been taking a little bit of a break as needed during the end of Lent and Holy Week. I hope it's been blessed for everybody. It's been quite interesting for us.
We've had some interesting times here in Flagstaff. For anyone who pays attention to that kind of thing, there was a very large forest fire that actually started on the what in the West you would call Palm Sunday, and for us is the Sunday of the Entrance of Christ. I mean, same thing. But there was a fire that started, I would say it was like 2 or 3 miles from the church.
Yeah.
Was where it started, and it went from 200 or 300 acres at the get-go to, I think today we're at like 22,000 acres.
Yeah, a little over or under 20,000.
So the church is under an evacuation order, so we haven't been able to celebrate Holy Service, or the Holy Week services by the church, or in the church. But we were able to pull most of the icons, our relics, and all of the service implements out. And there's a almost 100-year-old Catholic church.
Beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, very beautiful.
I'm actually appreciating it quite a bit.
In downtown Flagstaff, the Catholic Church graciously allowed us to use, which has been very nice.
Yeah.
And thankfully, as far as we know, none of our parishioners' homes have burned down, which is good. But be keeping the citizens of Flagstaff in your prayers, because there were, I believe, at last count, 25 or 30 structures have been burned down.
I think I read 60 now.
60 now.
Yeah.
Wow. So be keeping them in your prayers. Thankfully, like I said, no one in our parish has had their house destroyed. Glory to God. But still, it's been an interesting couple of days, because for anyone who lives in the West, you know that there is a fire season, but this is early for the fire season. It's atypical.
Yeah, we have one nearby in Prescott as well, and there was another one that they luckily got out within a few days out in Belmont, which is the
Belmont
other direction.
Is a suburb of Flagstaff,
yeah,
kind of.
We're basically surrounded by wildfires right now, and the wind has been brutal as well. We've had a little bit of precipitation, which has helped. Currently, right now, it's calm and
it's not windy
and sunny, so hopefully we'll be able to go back to our parish next week is what we're hearing. Right. The sheriff has not allowed anybody.
Well, he's not turned down our priest when our priest has gone to check on the church.
But we can't have service there.
Do services there. Yeah.
So yeah, with that being said, it's been interesting. At first, I was a little upset with it being my first Pascha and not doing everything that traditionally you do, but it's been a humbling experience. And
plus, you've been able to participate in some interesting ways, haven't you?
Yeah. So something I've been wanting to do for a while. My godfather, he's our reader and our chanter, both. He's an ordained reader and has a beautiful voice, self-taught, Orthodox his whole life. Yeah, cradle Orthodox. Been to Greece multiple times and has seen a lot of things, done a lot of things. He has taken me under his wing to learn to chant and to read, along with our other brother in Christ, Joseph, who has recently been...
He was just baptized at the beginning. No, it was like the second or third week of Lent?
March 12th.
Okay, yeah, so the end of the first week, beginning of the second week, something like that? Yeah.
Yes, so me and him have been doing some reading and some chanting. It's been a humbling experience, and it's given me an opportunity to learn more of the services and be present there. So yeah, that's been great. And originally my plan was to go to the monastery just to see my spiritual father, but some things happened and our priest brought to my attention that it's, as a community, we need to stick together. And yesterday I really kind of understood why. And I've been grateful. The church is beautiful. It's,
Right.
although it's Catholic, it's got this,
It's
the
not in the
acoustics.
modern. It's not in the modern Catholic
No,
style.
yeah.
It's a obviously, being in the States, it's not quite as ornate as some of the older medieval cathedrals that you'll see, or the medieval style, but it's still very beautiful.
Yeah, and it has the gargoyles outside.
Yeah, and sadly, and if we could solicit your prayers as well, because of the composition of the soil in Flagstaff. Obviously, it's a very volcanic region. Thankfully, not active anymore. But southern Arizona or northern Arizona, and coming into southern Arizona is almost completely volcanic. So they used a lot of cinders and stuff like that when they were making the concrete to build this church. But because of that, the alkalinity is very high in that concrete, so the structure is quite literally slowly disintegrating. Restoration is kind of possible, but that requires a lot of funds, and the Catholic Church here doesn't have the funds to pay for it. So they're trying to do fundraisers and stuff like that. But, if you would also be praying that that building would be preserved, because Flagstaff, as Ian and I have kind of mentioned before, is a very shall we say, unchristian or non-Christian part of the world.
Yeah, and if we can find any links for that for you guys to donate,
Yeah,
that'd be great. And sorry to cut you off, but one of the things I noticed during like all the BLM protests and whatnot is, luckily, people think it's such a beautiful building in general that it didn't get
well, we didn't have
messed with.
We didn't have a huge issue with vandalism and flag. Thankfully,
Yeah.
that wasn't a big issue here.
People like their downtown here.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even say people like their downtown per se, but people in Flagstaff tend to be chill,
Yeah,
to use a phrase that Ian probably didn't know that I knew.
they're stoned out of their mind is what he means.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're stoned or they're drunk, but I mean, generally people here don't have their hackles up all the time, which is nice. But still, I don't have a lot of faith in the Flagstaff city government or the county government to recognize the goodness of having a church, especially a very large Roman Catholic church downtown. So if the Catholic Church ever loses custody of that building for whatever reason, it may be preserved as a historic site. But even then, who knows what will be done with it. And it is a very beautiful church. It would be a shame to see it turned into something that it is not supposed to be.
Yeah, what I'll do is I've taken a few pictures. I'll take a few more and I'll throw them in the video so you guys can see where we're holding Pascha this year.
Yeah, it's. I think your wife took some photos last night during the procession, which was really cool.
Yeah, that was awesome. But besides that, we do have, like I've said, I feel like I've been saying it forever, but we have some stuff planned. I know everybody, as far as our guests, have been, a lot of them are clergy or obviously Orthodox. So it's been a chill few weeks, no recording.
Our attention is elsewhere.
Yeah, but we figured we had service at 9 this morning and we aren't back till midnight. We figured we'd do a quick hagiography for,
For our friend Jay
subscriber.
Struggling.
Yeah, for our friend who be struggling. So yeah, that's about it. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this. Our views have been getting better. That means the word's getting out. So glory to God for that. And we'll see what God has in store for us and where we're able to take this page. If you are interested, I started selling some of the books that I have and acquiring more books that I don't need to sell. So yeah, I'll drop that link in the description as well if you are interested. I have some Orthodox books, some mythology, some Russian literature, some stuff that Nathan doesn't want me to sell.
Ian acquired, and I don't know how the heck he managed to find this, but he got a first edition of Volume 1 of the Gulag Archipelago.
Which, if you don't know, that's by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and we did a
did
two-part series on his what was it, the Nobel Prize or the
we did it on his speech.
Harvard, right?
Yeah, his Harvard commencement speech.
So yeah, check that out. It's in the videos as well. But yeah,
he was planning on selling it until he showed it to me and said, "Hey, check this out." And I said, "You're not selling this, right?" He said, "Well, not now."
Yeah, I mean, they're making an offer. But moving on, Saint Germain of Paris, or Saint Germanus of Paris, is the saint that we're going to be talking about today, who we commemorate. I believe it's in May, right?
May 28th,
May
which is the
28th.
date
So,
of his repose.
yeah. So I'll put a picture up that I found online. I wasn't able to find very many icons per se,
Shocking. Western saints don't have many icons in the Eastern
but
tradition, which
there's
is
there's a
unfortunate.
few. The quality is more so what I wasn't,
Right.
stoked on. But yeah, that's kind of what I found for you guys. Maybe I'll be able to insert some more. But if you want to go ahead and start reading about Saint Germain of Paris.
All right. So Saint Germanus is venerated as a saint in both the Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox churches. According to early hagiographies, he's known as either Germain d'Autun or the father of the poor. He was born near Autun in what is now France under Burgundian control, 20 years after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire to noble Gallo-Roman parents. Saint Germanus studied at Avalon in Burgundy and at Lausanne under the guidance of his cousin Scallion, who was a priest, and at the age of 35 he was ordained by Agrippinus of Autun and became abbot of the nearby Abbey of St. Symphorien. He was known for his hard-working and austere nature. However, it was his generous almsgiving which caused his monks to fear that one day he would give away all of the wealth of the abbey. This resulted in their rebelling against him. And while in Paris in 555, Sibelius, the bishop of Paris, died, and King Childebert had him consecrated as the bishop of Paris, referring to Saint Germanus. Under his influence, Childebert is said to have led a reformed life. In his new role, the bishop continued to practice virtues and austerities of his monastic life, working to diminish the suffering caused by the incessant warfare. He attended the Third and Fourth Councils of Paris, 557 and 573 respectively, and also the Second Council of Tours in 566. He persuaded the king to stamp out the pagan practices existing in Gaul, and to forbid the excess that accompanied the celebration of most Christian festivals. Childebert was succeeded briefly by Clotaire, who divided the royal domains among his 4 sons, with Caribert becoming king of Paris. Germanus was forced to excommunicate Caribert in 568 for immorality. Caribert died in 570, and his surviving brothers fought violently over his possessions. The bishop encountered great difficulty trying to establish peace. With little success, Sigebert and Chilperic, instigated by their wives, Brunhaut and the infamous Fredegund, went to war. Chilperic was defeated and Paris fell into Sigbert's hands. Germanus later wrote to Brunhaut asking her to use her influence to prevent further war. However, Sigebert refused, and despite St. Germanus's warning, set out to attack Chilperic at Tournai. Chilperic had fled, and Sigebert was later assassinated at Vitry in 575, under Fredegund's orders, of course. St. Germanus died the following year before peace was restored. But for 9 centuries, during times of plague and crisis, his relics were carried in procession throughout the streets of Paris.
And then there's 2 stained glass panels depicting scenes from the life of Saint Germain, which are now in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Cloisters Collections, which is in New York. So a little bit about the Abbey Church of Saint Germain. During his war on Spain in the year 542, King Childebert besieged Zaragoza, or Saragossa. It's a capital city
in Provence.
Yeah, in Spain, right?
It's actually not Provence. I don't know why I said that. It's in Aragon.
Aragon, yeah, Spain. So
yeah,
that's actually Sierra's last name.
Formerly?
Yeah, well, it still is, technically. But yeah, upon hearing that the inhabitants had placed themselves under the protection of the martyr Vincent of Saragossa, Childebert raised his siege and spared Germain on the 23rd of December.
Spared the city
in gratitude. The Bishop of Zaragoza presented him with Vincent's stole. When Childebert returned to Paris, he caused a church to be erected to receive the relic. In 558, St. Vincent's Church was completed and dedicated by St. Germain on the 23rd of December. On the very same day, Childebert died. A monastery was erected near the church. I clicked something. Its abbots had both spiritual and temporal jurisdiction over the suburbs of St. Germain until about the year 1670. The church was frequently plundered and set on fire by the Normans in the 9th century. It was then rebuilt in 1014 and dedicated in 1163 by Pope Alexander III. There is a treatise on the ancient Gallican liturgy that has traditionally been attributed to Germain. The poet Venetius Fortunatus, I'm going to try to pronounce that, from who Germain commissioned a Vita Sancti Marcelli, which is like a...
I have no idea what that means. It's the life of something.
Yeah, the life of Vita Sancta Marcelli. We're not sure. Wrote a eulogy of his life. Germain's body lay for 2 centuries in a tomb chamber in the chapel of Saint Symphorien, in the atrium or forecourt of the church of Saint Vincent outside the walls of Paris. The translation of his relics to a more prominent and typically Frankish position within the main church,
behind the altar, I think.
Retro altar, was effected in 756 and was justified by his vision to a pious woman. The church was reconsecrated as Saint Germain de Paris, which means Saint Germain of Paris, I'm assuming.
Sure.
Fortunatus had visited Germain in Paris and was disappointed, so described the work as nothing but a string of miracles.
Wow, that's sad to hear. I mean, that's... Okay.
Germain, according to Venetius, had performed his first miracle in the womb, preventing his mother from performing an abortion. Germain's feast day is appointed, as we had mentioned, on the 28th of May, and his translation on the 25th of July.
Lord have mercy.
And
I'm curious to know now if Jay Struglin listens to this episode, which I hope he does since he requested it. I'll be very curious to know how St. Germanus affected his conversion, because that's...
Conversion from what did you mention?
He didn't specify, but I'd be very curious to know. But that's... Wow. But it is interesting. So the idea of there being a Gallican or Galician rite or Galician liturgy is interesting, because that actually kind of... So how shall I phrase this? We often mention St. John of San Francisco's desire and his often repeated exhortation to the faithful to venerate saints that are local to them. And he was actually quite influential in the revivification of French Orthodoxy. And I wonder if he had anything to do with the popularization of that particular French liturgy. If it's even used. I don't know if it's used at all. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, me either.
But that would be interesting.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah. I don't know. What thoughts have you, Ian?
Not many. It's probably a dangerous question to ask me. I'm trying to pull up a picture of something that I found, but it's not working.
Well, there's a picture of his tomb. It is also kind of interesting. So actually, on the note of the Normans, I came across something the other day, and I don't necessarily believe it, but apparently there are some people who would say... So for anyone who doesn't know, St. Edward the Confessor was the second... we'll say the second to last king of England prior to the Norman invasion, right? So... wonderful saint, technically post schism, but he's still a Western or an Orthodox saint. I heard someone argue, though, or came across an argument rather, that Harold Godwinson, who is one of the 3 contenders for the British throne after the death of St. Edward the Confessor, he fought against Harold Hardrada, who was I believe he was either Danish or Norwegian, I can't remember now, but he was a Viking king who claimed to have the right to the throne. And then you have, obviously, William of Normandy, otherwise known as William the Conqueror, who ended up winning that conflict. But someone argued that Harold Godwinson is the last Orthodox saint of Britain because he opposed the Normans, and he was still kind of in defense. He didn't... How should I say? He was someone who stood against importing the papal oversight in a non-Orthodox way. I don't buy that, because Harold Godwinson as far as I know, if my memory is correct, he was a fairly notorious philanderer, if my memory is correct. At least he lived with a mistress. I don't believe he ever married. And given that, I'm tempted to say that he's more along the lines of Charlemagne than St. Edward the Confessor, which is not high praise, at least in that regard, because Charlemagne was also a fairly notorious philanderer. I'm wanting to say he had in excess of 100 children because he had
Wow.
multiple concubines and multiple wives. But
I found some cool stuff real quick. I'm going to share. Give me 1 second.
that's
St. John.
St. John performing the liturgy, isn't it? St. John Maximovich.
Yeah, let me share this real quick. This is kind of interesting. I just stumbled across this. Give me 1 moment.
Are we muted?
No,
No, okay. Ignore that. I know things about technology, guys.
definitely not muted.
Oh, hush.
So, yeah, I stumbled across this. It's kind of based on what Nathan was saying, and it's like the restoration of the Divine Liturgy according to Saint Germanus or Saint Germain of Paris, and it says that the history of the liturgy's resurrection, prior to its restoration by the French Church, the Gallican liturgy had been reconstructed by Father Pierre Lebrun of the Oratory, which was from 1661 to 1729, Father Vladimir Guete, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, and the Abbe Louis Marie Olivier
Duchesne.
after the formation of the Orthodox Church of France in 1936. And it also says the restored liturgy has gone through several editions, 1956, 1968, 73, 75, and 98. Some Orthodox outside of the French Church circulated rumors that the liturgy was simply a product of Kovalevsky's imagination.
Who's a Russian priest who attempted to reconstruct it.
Yeah, he drew on the writings of numerous saints, and stuff like that, and kind of.
Yeah, because this is 1936.
Yeah.
Father Evgraf Kovalevsky, later Bishop Jean of Saint-Denis, said about restoring the Galician Rite used by the French Church. The principal documents he used had been unavailable to his predecessors, which were 2 letters described to St. Germain of Paris that described the liturgy in the 6th century. Yeah, and
then in response to this, Archbishop John Maximovich chaired a special liturgical commission that studied the liturgy word by word, comparing it to the original sources. The 1961 report of the commission declared the liturgy to be authentic. It was approved for use by the Church of Russia, the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, the Church of Romania, and the Church of Serbia. And present-day use, in addition to the parishes of the Orthodox Church of France, the Orthodox Church of Gauls, and the French Orthodox Church, the liturgy of Saint Germain is also used by a number of parishes that were formerly with the French Church, but which are now part of the Church of Serbia, the Church of Romania, and the Church of Alexandria,
So the
which is
Copts.
the Coptics. In 2010, the Gallican Rite priest and author Father Alan Smith was received into the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia with Metropolitan Hilarion, can never say that, Hilarion, blessing the continued use of the Gallican Rite at St. John the Wonderworker Orthodox Church in Des Moines, Iowa. So yeah, that's...
I've never wanted to go to Iowa, but I kind of want to go now.
Yeah, I didn't know there was
liturgy.
There's
That would
one
be really
there.
cool.
So yeah, the image is an image of St. John of Shanghai, or St. John Maximovich, serving the French liturgy, I would believe, in Des Moines, Iowa, or is this would be in San Francisco?
It would probably be in France, actually, because he was in France at that time, I believe.
And in the photo, it even looks like...
Looks like there's a couple of Roman Catholics there.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Or maybe not. I don't know.
It's hard to tell.
I mean, at that point in time, it wasn't
that's
cool
kind of
to wear a beard.
Yeah, well, I mean, not really too much else to talk about, but that's kind of cool that you had mentioned that, because I have read about them doing like the French liturgy.
Right.
But I didn't know where it came from, the history, how many times it had been, like gone through several editions, and then they eventually did research and found out it's a legit liturgy and they're able to serve it. It's not something that we do in the Greek church, although, I mean...
Well, one of the things that goes to show is, there's a lot of... One of the Protestant critiques of Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism as well, although I'm not going to necessarily defend Rome here, but they'll, we will say, okay, in the Orthodox Church, we do X, Y, and Z things because that has always been the tradition of the church. So infant baptism is a good one, right? We baptize infants because that's what the church has always done. And Protestants will often say things like, well, that was 2,000 years ago. There's no way to know that. And, you guys are just inventing stuff, which is hilarious coming from Protestants. But that being the case, it's interesting that this is just another thing to add to the list of, yeah, well, we've said this for 1,600 years, that this is something that we've done. And what do you know? When you investigate it, it's true.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
But it's not in the Bible.
Well, one of the things that is talked about in one of the Lord of Spirits episodes from several years ago, well, I say several years ago, like it's been around for that long, like a year and a half ago, is this whole discussion of the Baal cycle, right? And one of the claims that we make in the Orthodox Church is, okay, during the procession during Pascha, when the priest and a deacon or two priests are having this dialogue where one priest is on the outside banging on the church doors saying, and the priest on the inside says, or the deacon on the inside says, "Who is this King of Glory?" And then the priest on the outside responds with, "The Lord strong and mighty." And they go back and forth for whichever, I forget which psalm that is, but they recite it back and forth. And as it turns out, that is a correction of the Baal cycle myth, right? It's like, no. The how shall I say? Well, either way, we've maintained this tradition that God descends into the underworld, into Hades, to destroy death in Hades.
By
right?
by his own death.
And if we had, we've said, oh yeah, this is a long-standing practice. This is well known in the ancient world. And, up until 60 years ago when we discovered the Baal cycle, we had no idea that that was actually true. And it's like, well, our church has preserved that tradition, even though the documentation was lost, which is interesting. I mean, the more you look into Orthodox history, the more that stacks up. And it's irritating that people say, okay, yeah, well, you were right for the last 5, but for number 6, you're definitely wrong. It's like, well, no, you haven't been right yet. And we've been right every other time. So.
Yeah. And then I'm not going to chant these obviously, but there's a few hymns that I'll read real quick as well. This is I can never remember. Troparion, and then the Kontakion. The Troparion, it says, "Holy Germanus, as Bishop of Paris, you remain the monk you always were, cherishing the beauty of the liturgy and developing the cult of the saints. Your miracles merited your veneration by young and old alike. It was thus that you exercised a happy influence over the powerful and prevailed on them to free slaves and release prisoners. And in the name of Christ, in the Church of Gaul, you made to reign concord and peace." And the Kontakion says, "Let us celebrate the Father of the poor, the treasure of the needy, the master of wisdom of kings and powerful men, the unifier of the Church of Gaul, the unmercenary healer of all illnesses, Saint Germanus, the founder of the abbey that still bears his name, the crafter of peace, the exemplary pastor of Paris, for he intercedes for our souls before Christ our God." So yeah, some pretty cool stuff. I appreciate the comment on having us do this because we learned some stuff. I hope you guys learned some stuff too. Like I said, I've heard about the French liturgy, and I definitely want to attend one now. I wonder how that is. Maybe we could find one online or something. Maybe there's even some audio, we could throw it in the beginning of the video as the intro music and just kind of see how that sounds.
I'd still definitely like to see one in person. There's nothing quite like participating in a liturgy. And I think kind of touching back on our experiences with Holy Week this year, this is the first time you've ever really heard any of those hymns, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, briefly, I've skimmed through some of the books I have and seen some stuff online, but hearing it in person and like I said last night, I've said this a couple times today, but me and my wife watched The Passion of Christ last night. It was her first time. I've seen it a few times pre-Orthodox, but yeah, it's just kind of overwhelming in some ways, and obviously with me being up there behind the chanting stand, I'm trying to keep my composure, but today, my godfather Angelo, his voice is always beautiful, but today just really kind of moved me, and after watching The Passion of Christ, things are just making more sense to me, and I'm very grateful. I'm full of joy and sorrow as this time seems to bring, but yeah, the hymns are amazing. And even just the readings, we had the 12 Gospels.
Yeah, on Thursday.
on Thursday. That was a long service, but it was beautiful. And I think we were like an hour and a half in, and we're like on the fifth, and I'm like, oh,
Well,
this is happening.
Ian asked me before, at the beginning of the service, because I'm wanting to say you'd wanted to get together and talk about something afterwards, and I was like, well, maybe, but we start at 6, and this is a fairly long service, and you're like, what, like 2 hours? And I was like, if we cut a lot of stuff out, yeah,
Yeah, I
but
think we ended
probably
out, like,
we'll be done at like 9:30.
I think it was 3 hours and
It was
3 hours and
It was
15
just
minutes.
shy of 3.5 hours.
And obviously, I mean, you, not to like put you on the spot, but
Oh no, it's hard for me, man. It's hard. I
Well,
just knew it was going to be long.
you do, and glory to God, you stand pretty much the whole time, unless it's
Well,
a part where you sit.
Is you're fond of reminding me in 5 years I might not be able to stand.
2 years you'll have a cane, is what I was said today.
I'm not that falling to bits.
But for me, it was humbling because I can't, and that's like usually.
You want to know who's the tough one though? Barbara and
Oh,
Tula. So
man.
we have these. So Barbara's an older lady she was received into Row Corps in I want to say in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah,
It was the
she's
80s.
been Orthodox like 40 years.
Yeah, she's been Orthodox for a really, really long time, and she is the exemplification of that phrase, "God bless the Russians, for their feet are made of iron."
Yeah.
I mean, there's times when it's only a normal Sunday liturgy, right? Like there's such a thing as a normal Sunday liturgy, but she'll stand. I'll be like 45 minutes into the service. I'm like, oh man, my feet are killing me.
And then you look at
I need to
Barbara.
sit and I look at Barbara, and she hasn't moved at all, and is just standing there like a statue. And I'm like, okay, if Barbara can do this, I can do this.
Yeah. And then Tula, our greeter and the founder of
Yeah,
our
pretty much.
parish. Man, Father made a joke yesterday.
He's gonna chain her to a brick so she'd quit
Yeah.
running around.
He asked one of our other parishioners, "Did you
Tula's daughter.
Tula's daughter?
actually.
Yeah, did you find it?" And did I find what, Father? We need the brick so we can.
So Tula rests for a
Yeah.
little while.
But yeah, so it was a beautiful service as long as it was, and I don't know.
As much as I like the reading of the 12 Gospels, the Holy Friday services, the Lamentations are my favorite, just because
Yeah.
they have the best hymns to the Mother of God. In my
And
opinion.
everybody's singing them together.
Yeah. Well, and we kind of did like a call and I won't say call and response, but like I forget I don't know what the term is because I know nothing about music, but there was a series of hymns, and I can't remember which ones they were now, where the right side of the church would sing them, and then the left side would sing the next stanza. And
I didn't notice that.
Well, it was actually Angelo's daughter was kind of leading the other side.
Wow.
It was pretty cool. But the other thing that was neat as well, and I know Ian's wanting to get out of here before we
No, we're
reach
fine.
2 hours.
We're fine.
But the nice thing about being able to do our Holy Week services at the Catholic Church,
The acoustics.
well, the acoustics are great, but we're also like on the northwestern edge of downtown Flagstaff. And like we said earlier, Flagstaff is definitely not a hub of Christian culture.
Oh, are you going to talk about the procession?
And so we got to go process outside, which was pretty cool because, Friday night in Flagstaff, there's most towns I'd imagine, people are going to bars and doing what they normally do. And I'm not saying that like, yes, I can't believe other people would do that. I have a fondness for such activities myself.
Yeah,
But
just not as much during Holy Week.
well, not as much lately
Yeah.
for a number of reasons, but glory to God. But we go to process out and we're carrying the shroud of Christ, right? And as we walk out the front of the church, this guy is on the sidewalk and he's going presumably further downtown. Maybe not, so I don't want to talk too much trash on him, but he's walking down the sidewalk and we're like 10 or 20 feet behind him. And we're singing and chanting and we're carrying the
Christians
shroud.
are coming.
And he keeps on looking keeps on looking over his shoulder like every 20 or 30 seconds. And it was everything I could do not to start laughing despite the sobriety of the moment, because I just had this image of this guy walking down the street, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go have a couple of beers or whatever, go have a whiskey or whatever. And he's being chased down the street by Christ. I was like, isn't that just an image of how everything plays out for us? Like, oh, I'm gonna go do these horrible things, and then you look behind you and there's the crucified Christ coming behind you, and it's like, do you really want to do this?
Yeah, he's like, my time has come.
Right. It was a wonderful image, and it was
Not something you see in downtown Flagstaff
I mean, I'd
often.
imagine it's not something you see in the majority of American cities, and it just kind of made me wish that we could somehow acquire the Catholic Church,
Just because of the location,
just so we could do
more
the
stuff like that.
processions like that, and that would be awesome.
And the shroud, we won't get into it too much right now, but I have some ideas of talking to another parishioner of ours. Her name is Doina, and shout out to Doina. I know you're going to be watching our stuff, because you've been asking. But yeah, we had after liturgy, we went to the coffee shop and we talked about the shroud for like an hour,
The
hour
Shroud
and a
of
half.
Turin, specifically.
Yeah, the Shroud of Turin. So that might be a stream if you guys are interested in something like that. Not that we're experts at all on it, but just kind of, going over that. And then also Doina is from Romania. Her father was
a political prisoner under the communists.
Yeah, so she's got a lot to talk about. Very thick Romanian accent, but I think you guys would be able to understand her. And
Doina's wonderful.
Yeah,
She's
one of my favorite people. She's my favorite, not yours.
I've known her longer than you have.
True.
But yeah.
But yeah, we have some stuff that we're thinking about doing. If you have any ideas, drop them in the comments. Send us a DM. Bother Nathan as much as possible so that he has to deal with it more than me.
You enjoy the social media thing. I just kind of do it.
I do. But yeah.
I mean, lest we forget, this whole thing is your fault.
Well,
I mean, I suppose you could blame it on me because what is it you say? What would you guys chew me out for this morning? You were saying something about the movie The Passion of the Christ, and I made some comment, and I forget what I said, and you got all bent out of shape. But
I forget. You'll probably make another comment after we get out of this.
I never make comments. I'm always the paragon of professional and civil behavior.
Okay.
One too many lies during Holy Week.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video of Saint Germain of Paris. And, if you have any ideas on what we want to do or any topics, let us know. And hope that you have a blessed Pascha tonight.
So this will drop after Pascha, so I don't feel bad preemptively saying Christ is risen.
Christ is risen. And, it's going to be interesting. It's actually my birthday on Pascha, which probably won't happen again for a long time. And
we talked about this last time. You said it's going to be a long time, and I asked you if it was gray hair long time or dead long time.
Like
you never answered.
15 or 20 years, I think, is what it was, somewhere around there.
Well, just gray hair long time for you.
Yeah.
If you'll ever get gray hair.
I probably won't. And it's also my wife Anastasia's name day, because if you guys don't know what that name means, it's translated into the resurrection. Mm-hmm. So tonight will be the resurrection, Holy Pascha. I hope it's blessed for you guys, and that we will be able to see you guys soon. With that being said, God bless you. Christ is risen.
Truly he is risen. Cheers.
Cheers.